Well, hi, everybody. Uh, this message is being recorded for Prof 4500 on January 20th, 2025. And this is our first meeting of synchronous, possibly, information. This will be recorded, and of course, you can view it asynchronously as well. So welcome to class. I know several of you, which is always really nice. But for those of you that don't know me, my name is Astrid Northrup. And as I said in the introduction in our first discussion board, I've been teaching at Northwest College for over 25 years. So it's been a minute. This is the third time I've taught risk analysis, and I have really enjoyed it. And I also really enjoy working with the BAS program, which is a program I got to help start here at Northwest College several years ago. So it's a very exciting journey for me, and I'm excited to be with you. So the material for tonight and the material for this week is recorded, but I'm going to go through it on our Moodle page. So let's take a quick look at what we have and make sure that nobody has any questions or misconceptions. As you go through the Moodle page, there are some important things that we need to bring up. Now, of course, the syllabus and the schedule will tell us when we have to do things. The Zoom link for our class is right here. So anytime that you want to Zoom for class, please do so right there. And then, of course, you can always schedule an individual meeting with me. Now, last week we started reading Deep Survival. I hope you all find it to be interesting and informative. And then I also provided an example introduction paper about an experience I had that I'm going to talk a little bit about why I chose this example. And then, of course, you have the first writing assignment, which I see all 7 of you have submitted. So good. Also, everybody has responded to the first discussion board. So right now, everybody has a 100% in class. So that makes me very, very happy. In week 2, we're going to get down into it a little bit more. And basically, when we talk about risk analysis, there are different sorts of things that in everyday language we call risk, but are not actually risk in the professional sense of the word. Basically, in order for something to be a risk, there has to be an upside and a downside that either of those outcomes could happen depending on a series of events. And that the choices that you make leading up to that outcome influence whether you're going to gain or lose in the risk. So when I put up my paper here as an example for you about the time when I crashed an airplane, so this is for 2 reasons. One is because this is an example of the first section of the paper that you will write for this class. But the reason that I really chose this was, first of all, it's true. Second of all, it happened to me, so it's an experience. Third of all, I learned from it. Fourth of all, this was risk analysis in a very real way. And the real way was there were good outcomes and bad outcomes. And I made a bunch of decisions that led me to a bad outcome, but not a terrible outcome. It could have been worse. I could have wrecked the plane. I mean, seriously wrecked the plane, as in structural damage, and I could have been hurt, and I wasn't. So some of those things were luck, and some of those things were decisions that I had made. But the fact that I was flying an airplane toward a runway at a higher rate of speed and a higher altitude than I should have, all resulted from the choices I had made that put me in that position. So when we talk about risk analysis, the reason that we talk about it in a business-oriented program like this BAS in professional studies is because a lot of times when you make decisions in business, the outcome is not going to be settled. You can have a good outcome or a bad outcome. And by what I mean is, so for example, if you are investing in a new company, you could make a lot of money or you could lose a lot of money. And that's just one example. If you buy stocks, you can make a lot of money, you can lose a lot of money. And most people, when they make decisions like that, make the decision based on their instincts, perhaps their feelings, or past experiences that have occurred to them. And when it comes right down to it, the experience of business decisions should be made in a systematic way to maximize your chances of reward or gaining. So there's sort of three different things. There are opportunities, and there are dangers, and somewhere in the middle is a risk. Now, a danger, which I'm going to talk about a little bit tonight as well, is something that really doesn't have a lot of upside. It has a lot of downside, and so the only thing you can do is minimize the downside. So once again, when you take a look at your website, there are two papers here that that you will be reading that will talk about something that was treated as a risk, something famous that was treated as a risk, but that is really not a risk at all. It was a danger. And so the fact that it was dealt like with a risk led to a place where it was analyzed improperly and some horrible, horrible, horrible decisions were made. So let me see here. Okay, so we are here. This is actually going to be in week 3. So we'll talk about this next week, but there are 2 articles here. Even though this looks like it's a video, it's not. It's just it's a link to an article called Pinto Madness, and a reading assessment of the original Ford Pinto memo. So some of you may either know from growing up when you were younger or from something that you have heard about the fact that in the 1960s and early 70s, the Ford Pinto had a problem, a design flaw in the gas tank that allowed the Pinto to explode when it was impacted at very low speeds from behind. And there were some memos that came out, the original memo of which I found and put on our website, that really indicate that the people at Ford Motor Company knew about this, and they dealt with it in a way that didn't mitigate or lessen the chance of the danger. The way, in my opinion, would have been to retool and put the gas tank in a better location, or to cover it up better to shield it more from those rear impacts. But instead they dealt with it like a risk, and what they considered was the upside of making money, the downside of people's lives. Well, that really does not work. So the analysis and the responses of the company to the Pinto's flaws is an analysis in how not to do risk analysis. In other words, you can't do risk analysis unless you're dealing with a risk. And that's the first thing that we're going to encounter in this class, is deciding, when you decide what you want to write about, is it really a risk, or is it just a danger or an opportunity? An opportunity might be if you have $10,000 and you're going to put it into a certificate of deposit, and you might get a 4% interest rate, or you might get a 5.5% interest rate if you go somewhere else. So to a different bank or to a different savings and loan. Well, if your investment is insured, there's really no risk involved in that. It's just an opportunity. Just like the Ford Pinto, there's no upside to the Ford Pinto that explodes in very common situations. So it's just a danger. So the first thing we need to do is to find out what is a risk. Okay. And when we figure out what a risk is, then we can write about risk analysis. But I've blocked our material after the 3rd week, because before the end of the 3rd week, each one of you will have to work with me and get a response that the paper, the topic that you choose for this class, is really a risk, that it's neither an opportunity nor a danger. So we need to find that sweet spot and understand what it is we're talking about. All right, so going back to that, when we talk about risk, we're talking about different way. When we talk about risk analysis, we talk about assessment and management and communication. So these are always very multifaceted problems. Now, this is one of the reasons that I choose that book, Deep Survival, to talk about. In the first week, you should have read the prologue and chapters 1 through 8. And in the second week, this week, you'll be reading the remainder of the book. And then one of your writing assignments for this week will be to take the quiz over a couple of questions that are involved in the book Deep Survival. But when you talk about survival situations, and I'll just show you for just a second. I'm sure you all know this is just one version of the book, Deep Survival. The upside of a lot of different survival situations, like if you're riding a snowmobile, for example, people who are avid snowmobilers derive a lot of joy from riding snowmobiles. It's a lot of fun. It's a chance to get out. You're with family. You're with friends. You're in the outdoors. You're getting fresh air. You're having an experience that other people maybe would never get to have. So there is a lot of upside to that. The downside is there's a lot of danger associated with it. And the problem in terms of risk analysis is being rational enough to decide when the danger is not worth it anymore. And so the book talks a little bit about, for example, getting into situations where avalanches are likely. So if you're in a situation where an avalanche, if you're on a snow machine, and when you're in a situation where the avalanche is unlikely and the payoff of joy and happiness and adventure is high enough, that's a risk analysis, making that decision. But if you are in a situation where the danger of an avalanche becomes too great, you have to have a process for making that decision, because the chance of dying weighed against the chance of having a great day is really, well, it's something that you definitely need to consider. So what Deep Survival really talks about, and this is going to be the root of what we talk about in this class, what Deep Survival really talks about is developing a systematic process of analyzing risk. First of all, deciding if it's risk or if it's danger, okay? If it's danger, just minimize. That's all you can do, minimize the danger. But if it's a risk, how do you get the cards in your favor so that your chances of benefit outweigh your chances of whatever is a danger in terms of the risk, okay? So this is the first piece that we need to do, is to separate those two ideas and to not think about risk in the ways that we've always talked about the word risk. Because in this class and in the academic discipline of risk analysis, risk means something very, very specific. So first of all, before we do a risk analysis, we have to be dealing with risk. All right, so having said that, let me come over here and share our Moodle page again and just take a look at some of the stuff that we're going to talk about. All right, so here's the example paper. It's one of the reading assignments that you have this week. Even though it's in week 1, it will be one of your reading assignments for week 2. So you'll see that you have a quiz submission here, and you have a writing assignment, and you have a second writing assignment. Maybe that's in the following week. Hang on just a second. There it is. So this is the reading. So you just have to read that paper. Okay, so read this part, and then you have a quiz, which is just over deep survival. All right, so in week 3, we're going to, which is not this week, but next week, we're going to start talking about some other stuff, and we're going to start proposing a topic for your paper. By the end of next week, you should have a pretty good understanding of what risk means and be able to determine a risk that you would like to write about. Now, the other thing I really want to make clear is I bring up deep survival because I think, especially living where we live, we're pretty familiar with the outdoors, and a lot of us have had outdoor adventures of different types. And I also just think this is a great book because it's in a qualitative way, it brings up a lot of these ideas. Risk analysis in general is very quantitative. You're talking about numbers. You have a certain amount of money, you're going to invest it in a certain way, and you're hoping for a certain kind of payoff, but you realize that you might have some sort of a non-payoff, and so you weight that in a deliberate fashion. you can still do that. In other words, you don't have to write about jumping out of an airplane or climbing a mountain in the winter. You can write about, if I'm going to buy Bitcoin, what are the benefits and what are the hazards that are involved in this? And is it worth it? And these are the steps that you take in order to determine whether it's a good idea or not for you. And that could vary, right? If you have expendable cash, for example, if you're quite wealthy and you're paying all of your bills and you have expendable income, the risk is not as great as if you're betting the farm, as they say, on a particular endeavor. So the risk is not even the same for everybody else, just so you know. All right, but we'll be talking about that, and then next week you'll propose a topic, and then you and I will refine that together. You'll propose it. I'll send you back some information or some ideas. Maybe I'll say, this is perfect, run with it. Or maybe I'll say, no, think about this other thing, and then you can write back to me and so forth. But we'll work that out in the next week. So this week we're going to finish up deep survival, and you're going to read the paper that I have posted up above, and you're going to post to this discussion forum. And post, the prompt is, what is the takeaway for you from deep survival? Well, from me, you can hear my takeaway is that you have to have a way of not tricking yourself into thinking that things are safer than they are. Okay, that you can have fun and you can have adventure, but you really need to get it out of your gut, and you need to have a systematic way of analyzing whether this is a good idea or not. Now, because outdoor adventure is a gut level experience and it's something that brings people joy, there's no way to completely disassociate it from your gut level feeling. And I also support the idea that people, if you pay attention to your instincts, like in survival situations, you may be able to increase your odds of survival. However, when you're talking about money or business decisions, I will guarantee that you will try to fool yourself into thinking, some people who are optimistic will think that things are better than they are, and people who are pessimistic will think that things are worse than they are. And both of them have flaws. People who invest in things they shouldn't lose money, and people who don't invest in things that they should lose. There's an opportunity cost involved in that. So everything is about a balance, and everything is about thinking things through and having a system for thinking them through that will help you make the best decisions. All right. So, like I said, the quiz is the quiz over deep survival. Here on your Moodle page is the discussion guide for deep survival. So you'll choose 3 of those questions and create a file for me that you will submit right here. Okay. And that file will be answering 3 of those questions. Now, the answers should be constructed like good academic writing, a nice paragraph or 2, a good document, double-spaced, 1-inch margins, that sort of thing. All right. And then submit it in PDF or a Word document format, but don't submit it as an HEIC, don't submit it as a picture, don't submit it in any format except for either a PDF or a Word document. All right, so on Monday of next week, we will meet again. Maybe we'll meet face to face, maybe we'll meet on Zoom. It just sort of depends on the weather, but anytime that you need to reach me, please don't hesitate to call me or send me a text or send me an email. Or if you happen to be in this area, about half of you live in Powler Cody, so it's a possibility, just stop by my office because I'm here a lot and I always welcome your company. But if you are not able to reach me through those avenues and you want to set up a Zoom appointment or a face-to-face office appointment with me, you can do that through the link at the top of your page, right here, schedule an independent Zoom meeting with me. And if you schedule that Zoom meeting, that means that we'll have 30 minutes of uninterrupted time. We may have to do that as we're refining the topic for your paper, and that's a good opportunity at that point. But whatever, I have a lot of availability, and I remain available to you as much as possible. I think all the time, but don't hesitate to text me or email me at night or on weekends either, because if I'm asleep or I'm busy, I will just answer you when I get done. And I think I've mentioned this before, but please don't leave a voicemail, because I don't pick up my voicemail. So if you call me and I don't answer and you need to leave a message, just text me and I will get back to you in a very timely fashion. All right, everybody. So I think the message for today is, what is risk? What is the difference between risk and opportunity and danger? And how does that apply to a topic I might like to write about for this class? All right. If you have any questions, get a hold of me. Otherwise, have a wonderful week. I think it's going to get warmer, so let's keep our fingers crossed, and we'll see you next week.